Podcast. My name is Frank and I am the host of the show. I discuss and review movies new and old. You can watch the show on YouTube and Facebook under the Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. You can listen to the show wherever you get your podcast. Please rate and review the show on the platform that you listen or watch on. This helps in the promotion of the show. You can email the show at bendyourearpodcast@gmail.com. Please visit the website at letmebendyyourear.com. All the episodes are available there. On this episode, I'm going to review Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. So before I get into the review, obviously, if you are an 80s kid like me, or even if you've seen action comedies, one of the definitive ones, and some would argue the most definitive one, would be Beverly Hills Cop, which came out in 1984. You can see and hear my review of that movie in episode 73 of this podcast if you want to check that out. Obviously, if you are a fan of Eddie Murphy and of Beverly Hills Cop, obviously this is probably arguably his definitive movie role. You know, when it came out in 1984, it was a monster hit, directed by Martin Brest. And there was a sequel that came out 3 years later, directed by the late Tony Scott, Beverly Hills Cop 2, which I have not reviewed for this podcast. I may revisit it since I'm reviewing the current one now, which is a decent movie as well. And then, of course, Beverly Hills Cop 3 came out in 1994, which was directed by John Landis and took place in an amusement park. And I'll get to kind of an in-joke in Beverly Hills Cop Axel F about Beverly Hills Cop 3. It was not warmly received, to be honest with you. And pretty much Eddie Murphy and anybody has admitted that it's not a very good movie. I've seen the film and it's not good at all. Again, another one I haven't reviewed, which I may revisit if I decide I want to see that one again. So, of course, going into this movie, before, I saw it, and when I saw the lead up to it, I was excited about, obviously, a Beverly Hills Cop movie, but still skeptical, obviously, coming off the third film, which was not good. It's always tough to see. I kind of look at a movie like this, which has kind of been the trend of movies and intellectual property. I can go back to Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny. You can listen to that review. I wasn't particularly a huge fan of that movie, and there were some issues with it. When you're revisiting a character after 40 years, and in this case with Beverly Hills Cop, it's been 40 years since the original movie, there's always a bit of skepticism. So when they announced it, I'm like, well, I was half and half. I was excited, but wasn't sure what to expect. Excuse me. One of the things early on that made me more excited about the movie was the fact that they had John Ashton and Judge Reinhold coming back as Taggart and Rosewood. And I'll get into their characters more in the review. But of course, if you are a fan, especially the first two movies, that's great news. They were some of the best things about Beverly Hills Cop. So it was great to hear that they were back. And then as the casting progressed, you found out about Kevin Bacon. You find out about Joseph Gordon-Levitt coming in, two very good actors as well. So when I see good actors, for me, when I'm watching movies or hearing about movies that are coming out, when I see good actors circle around a project, it gives me some hope of optimism that they're coming on. Of course, they wanted the chance. I know Kevin Bacon said he wanted the chance to work with Eddie Murphy, but I think also it would have to have been a decent script for Kevin Bacon to sign on, or for Joseph Gordon-Levitt to sign on as well. So that also made me optimistic as well. But of course, at the end of the day, you never know until you see the movie as well. So let's get into the discussion and review of Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. So as the movie opens, it really is a... Well, let me go back. So one of the thoughts as I was watching the movie was that it reminded me, and not in a good or bad way, just of Force Awakens. So when J.J. Abrams got into Star Wars, a lot of the criticism of Star Wars was that it was a copy, basically, of Episode 4, A New Hope, the first Star Wars. And this movie kind of takes that template. Again, I'm not saying that as a criticism. Some people may see it as such, but it's just a good description of it, a good comparison of it. So just like the first Beverly Hills Cop Axel F opens with Axel in Detroit still being a cop. So he is, in the beginning of this film, he's going to a hockey game with one of his colleagues, another detective. And of course, he's not really going to watch the hockey game. And there's some funny banter about black people in hockey, which was funny. But there is a robbery that's about to go down that Axel is trying to sniff out that's related to a bunch of other robberies that are happening. And then, of course, there's a big action sequence to open the film like there was in the first one. If you remember the first one, he was trying to buy illegal cigarettes and got stuck in the truck, and there was a chase scene. So basically, that's what opens the film. And, of course, he gets in trouble, and his superior is another returning character, Jeffrey Friedman, who's the deputy chief in this movie, played by comedian Paul Reiser. So it was great to see him back as well. And as that film opens, he's getting ready to retire, and of course, he's always helped Axel out, kind of had his back and things like that. So Axel is still on the street, and they address that as well, as like, why, after all this time, would he not be either retired or doing something else? And they address that in the movie, so they don't ignore the fact that he's 40 years older. They don't ignore the fact of any of that. They don't pretend like that's not going on. So they address it in humorous ways. So that's going on in Detroit. So now in Beverly Hills, we find out, we are introduced to Axel's daughter, Jane, in the film, and she is played by Taylor Page. So in the movie, Jane is a defense attorney in Beverly Hills. So she's still living out there. And she is called, or she is hired to defend a young man who's accused of murdering a police officer in the midst of dealing drugs. So there's drugs found in the car. There's video of this young man and the police officer while the police officer is being murdered. So they implicate him. They charge him with the murder. Now, there is video, but we don't find out about it. Nobody knows there's video, and the video is missing. So in that particular part of the plot, we find another returning character, Judge Reinhardt, playing Billy Rosewood, of course, one of the best characters in Beverly Hills Cop. So he's been following this case, and he ends up resigning over it and becoming a private investigator. So he ends up obtaining this video that may or may not exonerate Jane's client. So Rosewood is in the case and ends up being kidnapped. So this brings Axel out to Beverly Hills. So obviously in these movies, you have to have a reason for him to come back from Detroit to help out. So that's the setup of the movie. As he gets to Beverly Hills, now Axel and Jane are estranged. And, they'll get into that more of the story. He's divorced from Jane's mom. They haven't spoken to each other in years, so there's an estrangement there. So she's not happy to see him. Of course, he wants to see his daughter, try to find out what's going on, try to find out where Billy is. And then the other main returning character is Taggart, played by the great character actor John Ashton. I was super happy to see him in this movie. And just as a side note on John Ashton, on this podcast I always advocate for character actors. And John Ashton, Beverly Hills Cop, the original, and Midnight Run, both directed by Martin Brest. John Ashton and Midnight Run. And Midnight Run's a classic, and I've reviewed Midnight Run on this podcast as well. He's fantastic in both those movies. He's great. And I haven't seen him, and I'm sure he's acted all this time, but it's great to see him in this movie as Taggart. And now he's the chief of police in Beverly Hills. So he's dealing with this situation as well with a murdered cop. Of course, it's a high-profile case. And then you're introduced to the other two main characters that are new. You have Detective Bobby Abbott, who's on the case, played by, of course, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And then you have Kevin Bacon playing Captain Cade Grant, who was the superior of the officer that was killed. So that's basically the movie in a nutshell. So let me get to the things I liked about the movie. There's a lot to like. Like I said, I was very skeptical, or even just concerned. Not even so much skeptical, more leery of how I was going to enjoy this movie. And now granted, I wanted to go in, hoping it's going to be great. And like I said, a lot of it was really good. So one thing I want to point out is the score. So if you are a fan of the first movie, you remember the Axel Foley theme, the keyboard theme by the great 80s composer Harold Faltermeyer. So he scored a lot of movies in the 80s. The two I remember the most are, and he's done a bunch, is Fletch and Beverly Hills Cop. Those are the two I know him for the most, those two movies. And Fletch's got a great score, and so did Beverly Hills Cop. So the current composer, who I actually don't know who the composer's name is, and I did not look that up, I should have, but he took the route of incorporating the main Axel F theme into the soundtrack, into the score. So it's great to hear those rhythms, and then in other parts of the movie, they really do a good job of incorporating that, which brings the nostalgia. Now, this movie is heavy in nostalgia, definitely heavy in nostalgia, and It's great to see if you're a fan of it. I liked it a lot. Some people may not be a fan of it, or may not be a fan of the nostalgia, or if they really are not into Beverly Hills Cop and are watching this movie cold, they may not. But I thought it was great, and I'm glad they incorporated it. Another thing that I liked about the movie, of course, Eddie Murphy being this character, it looked to me, and Beverly Hills Cop 3, just for a comparison, even though that movie's not very good, it really looked like, and I think it was, he just phoned in his performance in that movie. And Beverly Hills, he was just there. He was Axel, but it was just Eddie Murphy there. Here he seems fully engaged in the character. He's funny. It's he's got the quips, the interaction, the interplay between him and all the other characters, with Cade, with the detective, with Taggart and Rosewood, of course, is all fantastic. And the story is filled with action. This is what it is. It's an action comedy. And this movie succeeds in doing that in a very retro way. Now, they add some new things in there, but there's a lot of Easter eggs back to the 80s. There's things big and small. I'm not even going to get into them that call back to the 80s and things from the 80s and things like that. Jokes, and even jokes about his age are done, and it's not overdone. Everything is kind of perfectly balanced that way, and it's good. And of course, adding Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Kevin Bacon, two really good actors who seem to be having a good time in their roles. And Kevin Bacon especially, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt is always solid, especially when you find out that his character used to date Axel's daughter. And then, of course, the relationship between Axel and his daughter is played in the movie as well. I thought that was good. I didn't have an issue with it. I thought it was naturally fleshed out in the movie. It's never going to be super deep because this isn't, it's not a family drama. It's just, an action comedy. So for what it needed to do, I thought it was fine. And I thought, the actress that played her was fine as well. So no issues there. Some very good action, some funny action sequences. So that's the thing. There's a couple of action sequences that made me laugh. There's one towards the end of the movie in the helicopter that they've shown in the trailer, and actually I think they've shown almost the full scene. That scene is hilarious. Just the interaction between Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Eddie Murphy is fantastic. So of course, just like the first movie, he's investigating the murder of this cop and finding out if Jane's client is in fact guilty or innocent. So obviously, as he's digging in, he finds out more things that happen and actually who's involved and how far up it goes. So it's a serviceable plot for this film, and I don't say that as a derogatory remark, but again, it works for the plot. I think the purpose of this movie here is, like I said, to compare it to J.J. Abrams' Force Awakens. Is I think for Eddie Murphy to decide to do this, because I know this has been percolating for probably over 10 to 15 years. I think he's always wanted to make another Beverly Hills Cop. There's just been reasons why it hasn't happened, whether the script wasn't right, director wasn't right. There was various reasons that kept him from doing it until we arrive at this point now. I know people are probably upset that it's on Netflix. I mean, I wish this is one that you'd like to see in a theater, but again, for me, I would have preferred that because I always like the movie-going experience, but the fact that I was able to watch it on Netflix and get it reviewed as soon as it came out is always great. That's always one of the advantages of streaming. I had the accessibility for me to get to see the movie. But again, it was really entertaining, really funny. And like I said, and of course, you get the great Bronson Pinchot coming back as Surge, who will always be funny to me. And the way they use him in this movie is actually kind of funny too. So he was great as well. And again, a lot of action, a lot of comedy. And like I said, this is a nostalgia trip. So if I'm going to get to, whatever the criticism of this movie is, I think if I had to levy one, I think it's going to be, if you're not into that, if you really weren't a huge fan of Beverly Hills Cop or don't really fall into the 80s nostalgia of it, this movie may not hit you the same way. I think it's still an enjoyable action comedy. Even if you've never seen the other ones, you'll probably, as a standalone movie, I think it's pretty entertaining. Obviously, if you know the story, know the characters, know the history of the characters in the movie, it's going to be way more enjoyable. But I don't think that's necessary to watch this movie to have that. Because like I said, they throw the 80s stuff in, but they throw in enough modern stuff to make it funny. And a lot of it made me laugh. And there were some things that made me laugh out loud. Now, is it Beverly Hills Cop, the original? Absolutely not. It is not. And that's a tough, and not that I was expecting that. Beverly Hills Cop is a classic action comedy. It's one of the best. And Martin Brest is a fantastic director of action comedy. Like I said, that back-to-back, that and Midnight Run are two of the best action comedies ever made. And he was one of the best directors at doing that. At least in those two films, phenomenal, because he had the perfect balance of action and comedy. And this movie tries that balance as well. It does a pretty good job. Like I said, the action is good. There's, violence in the sense that there's things at stake. It's not just it's not cartoonish in any way. They take the action seriously, but still have fun with it. It's a fun movie. That's the best way I can say it. And like I said, it was probably, I think it was better than I expected. I wasn't expecting a trash movie, but I don't think I was expecting maybe to enjoy it as much as I did. And I really, really enjoyed Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. It's great to see those characters back. It's great to see Eddie Murphy with his natural charisma, just that natural thing that he has, that he was born with. And like I said, this character perfectly embodies everything that Eddie Murphy does well. And it looks like it looks like he was having a good time in the movie. Like I said, unlike Beverly Hills Cop 3, it looks like he was fully engaged. He really had a good time. And like I said, it looked like everybody had fun. It looked like it was everybody getting back together to do something fun with a pretty good story, and I enjoyed it, and I was invested in the characters, which is all you can ask for in a movie like this. Like I said, it's not going to be Beverly Hills Cop. Like I said, that's a classic. I don't think you can ever top that movie. But for a fourth movie in a series, and then after a break of 30-something years and 40 years since the first movie came out, there was a lot of reason to believe that it was not going to be very good, or people were just going to phone it in just to have the opportunity to cash in and do another movie, and it doesn't feel like that at all. So that's the best compliment I could give it. So like I said, it's an entertaining summer movie, and like I said, it's on Netflix. It's great. You can pop it in and watch it. If, like I said, if you're a fan of Beverly Hills Cop, you will definitely love the things that they put in here. They definitely tie it back and make you think of those first movies, make you want to rewatch them, but of course make it more modern, modern enough where I think modern audiences will enjoy it as well. So like I said, I was pleasantly surprised, and I'm very happy that I can recommend Beverly Hills Cop Axel Foley. And I'm going to go ahead and give that film 3.5 stars out of 5. So for me on that scale, that's a recommendation. Usually 4 stars is a full-throated recommendation, but even at 3.5, I would recommend you check this movie out, especially if you're a fan of Eddie Murphy. Again, like I said, I think people that are not into the character, or like I said, they probably wouldn't watch the movie anyway, but they may not get as much enjoyment as people that love Beverly Hills Cop, love Eddie Murphy. But like I said, even if I don't know who would not be a fan of this particular genre of movie, but if you're not and you're looking for some good action and a funny movie, I would definitely check it out if you're not into it per se. But again, I give it 3.5 just for that reason. Like I said, I think it's good. Is it a classic movie? No, it's not, but that's okay. Expecting a classic out of the fourth entry in a film series, that's a lot to ask. So that was not my expectation. But like I said, with 3.5 stars, that's a recommendation from me. I would watch it again. Like I said, I think for what it is, it does the best job it can do. And like I said, that's pretty respectable. And a respectable sequel is very good, because like I said, most sequels, with very few exceptions, are okay to really bad. And this movie is better than okay. It's not all-time classic, but it's way better than okay, which is, to me, a hugely successful accomplishment. And let me mention the director. So this is a first-time director, Mark Malloy. So I think Bruckheimer, the producer, got him from advertising. So this is his first film, and he does a good job. So for a first-time director taking on a property that's a classic, I think he did an outstanding job. So I'm sure he's going to have a future directing films. And like I said, he did a great job of really honoring the characters, honoring the past of the film, honoring the storylines and the relationships of the legacy characters. I think he did a great job of that, and I think that was his intention. And I saw a snippet of him quoting regarding the violence in the film. I think when he was hired on, and maybe that's why Bruckheimer picked him, he was really invested in bringing that feel back of the original Beverly Hills Cop. The violence, the action, the comedy, the way they did it in the 80s. I think he was very invested in doing it, and the creative choices he made in that movie reflect that. And that's why, again, I bring the Force Awakens comparison in, because with J.J. Abrams, I think the criticism of that film, and I think some of the criticism of this film, is that it's just a retread, and not that it's terrible, but it's just really not. It's a by-the-numbers action film. And Force Awakens received that same criticism of being just kind of a repeat of the first Star Wars, which I don't disagree with necessarily, but I think J.J. Abrams' thought, just like Mark Malloy's thought, was it had been a long time since we had Star Wars. The Star Wars prequels were mixed reviews at best. And I think he wanted to bring, and I think when Disney took it over, wanted to bring that spirit back of adventure, practical effects. That was his focus. And sometimes, you bring in what the formula that worked. And I think that was the philosophy, to be what's the word I'm looking for? A workman-like director. Not so much a creative vision, but just be a workman-like director. Hit the story points that you want to hit to get people to have those good feelings about whether it's the Star Wars franchise or in this case Beverly Hills Cop. So I think that was to me it felt like the same philosophy. And when in movie criticism, I'm sure people don't respect that because they want something original every single time. And I don't dismiss that criticism, but if they are going to do it this way, my issue is, do you execute it well? And I think in this case they executed it well. So like I said, if they didn't execute it well, that's a whole different conversation. But I think, in my opinion, they executed it very well. I was very entertained. It was fun. I watched it late at night, too, so I was up for the whole thing. So it kept me engaged throughout. I really enjoyed it, laughed out loud a few times, and really just enjoyed myself. And that's what a summer movie should be, whether it's on Netflix or theaters. A movie you can enjoy, just have fun, eat your popcorn, laugh a little bit, have some fun with the action. And that's exactly what this does, and this movie delivers. So again, like I said, it doesn't rise to the level of Beverly Hills Cop, the first one, but it's a well-executed homage to that movie and homage to the 80s, which to me is going to make me biased because I'm an 80s kid. So again, Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F., directed by Mark Malloy. I'm giving 3.5 stars out of 5, and you can currently see the film on Netflix. And again, you've got Eddie Murphy, Judge Reinhold, John Ashton, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Kevin Bacon, among others in the cast. So I definitely recommend it. Check it out if you do have Netflix. I think you will enjoy it. It is a very, very entertaining movie. So again, thank you for listening to the show. You can follow this podcast on X, Instagram, and YouTube under @LetMeBendYourEar. Oh, I was about to say the handle wrong. The handle is @BendYourEarPod. There you go, @BendYourEarPod on all those platforms. If you can, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you do watch this on video, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing that. The video is, like I said, another way to try to grow the audience, so thank you for that. I've gotten over 100 subscribers, which is pretty cool for me, so I'm very appreciative of that. And if you can, like the like the Facebook page as well. The videos for this will be they're on X. I don't really talk about X video that much because X has changed. So they're on X for a certain period of time where you can watch the video on X if you want. But after a while, it just goes to a link that doesn't really work. I still post there on X. So if you want to see the videos, it's on my X page, or go to YouTube is probably the best way to do it. As soon as they change it on X, I'll promote it more. I love X to interact with people, but that's just why I don't really say about the video on X. Really go to YouTube, or the videos are on the Facebook page as well. So that's also Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast on YouTube and on Facebook. If you can like the Facebook page and subscribe to the YouTube channel, because obviously I do want to grow this show. I'm in the 6th year of doing the podcast, so like I said, I continue to want to grow, and I appreciate everyone that listens and downloads the show. As I stated in the last episode, there's been an increase in downloads, which is fantastic. I don't know why there is, but I am grateful for it. So that means at least people are enjoying what I'm doing. So I appreciate it. If you want to email the show, the email for the show, of course, is @BendYourEar. Again, confusing the handles with emails. The email is bendyourearpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that email is bendyourearpodcast@gmail.com. If you are watching the show on Facebook or YouTube, whether live or later on, and you'd like to support the show, if you can click on the QR code that's right up here on the left, and that'll allow you to donate to the show. There is some cost associated with the podcast. It's not prohibitive, but anything you can do to help would be great. That everything goes to offset the cost in producing the show, because I have the streaming software, the website. So there's a couple things that I pay for to use. So if you can help with that in any way, if you do enjoy the show, I would really appreciate that. And thank you. Again, this is a one-man operation, and I want to thank everyone again for listening. So to wrap up, Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. with Eddie Murphy, I'm giving 3.5 stars out of 5. So again, thank you so much for watching and listening.